Hey, everybody, this is Tony Robles, and this is Listen and Be Heard. We know that April is National Poetry Month, but for me, poetry exists every second, every month, every day, every millisecond, every heartbeat, and every breath of every day that we live. And we are celebrating poets and poetry in April and every day of the year. It's no less true with a wonderful book that has just came out by a poet who I got to say, this book it's called Journeys of Voices and Choices, and it's just a wonderful collection. Ernie Brill grew up in a lively Brooklyn project of freelance storytellers. Brill's pioneering fiction about hospital workers, I Looked Over Jordan and Other Stories, Boston South End Press in 1980, was optioned by Ozzie Davis and Ruby Dee's public television series With Ruby and Ozzie. Ms. D performed Ernie Brill's Crazy Hattie Enters the Ice Age to critical acclaim. He earned an MFA or an MA in English from San Francisco State University, and won a $4,000 fiction grant from the New York State Council of the Arts. Anyway, I could go on and on, but let's go on by saying hello to Ernie. Ernie, how are you?
Fine, fine. Nice intro, Tony.
Hey,
Yeah,
okay, so you had an MA from San Francisco State University when I guess in English. When
right.
you were going there, was it known as San Francisco State College?
Yeah, it was a rinky-dink teachers college.
Well,
Somebody,
out of that rinky-dink teachers college, did come the first ethnic studies program in the country, and you were involved in the push for that. Is that correct?
you bet, from the from November 6th, the first day of the strike, till March 21st, I was out there like a lot of people from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. Usually when the police chased us off the campus, and I got there before the sun was up. And a lot of times, because I'm from Brooklyn, I would scout around the outlying area to make sure everything was peaceful. But
Yeah.
sometimes I would see, two or three police vans in the Lake Merced residence duplex apartment.
Mm.
So I'd come back and say, something's up, fellas, be on alert.
So there was a feeling of solidarity, and then there was this impending thing. I guess at that time, um, who was the president? Was it Hayakawa, S.I. Hayakawa?
he was the he was the fake. He was the charlatan president because he bypassed all procedures for selecting a president. He
Mm.
bypassed the faculty senate. He bypassed all the procedures. He just grabbed the job that the college was willing to give him, the trustees were willing to give him,
Hmm.
because he was a known supporter of Richard Nixon.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was given $40,000 off the bat from one of Nixon's big California supporters, a guy named Clement Stone, who was a known right winger. So when he was pouring out these leaflets when he attacked the sound truck, and I happened to be in it
Hmm.
because I saw my best friend, who was the leader of SDS, basically white students organization, Students for Democratic Society,
Hmm.
that had evolved from a mainly electoral organization in the early 60s to a more militant, anti-war, anti-racist outfit.
Mm.
Mainly white students, but there was some Black and Chicano and Asian American students in SDS, but not many.
Yeah.
So when I saw my friend in the sound truck and I had just seen these vans, I said, John, get out. I'll do this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's obvious that that had an impact on on your poetry, on your work. Now, you're originally from Brooklyn, is that correct?
Yeah.
I guess what I wanted to ask you, and because your wonderful collection here, Journeys of Voices and Choices, is broken into several into different kind of sections, and you
Yeah.
deal in the first section with Brooklyn. Um, you know, the writer Ron Rash, who's a North Carolina writer, said something profound. He said that landscape is destiny. And then if you go to Ralph Ellison, Ellison wrote that geography is fate. Being from Brooklyn, what role does that play in your in your work, in your poetry?
I just want to say that this thing about landscape is destiny,
Mm-hmm.
that's tricky because there's a whole lot of history books that talk about manifest destiny,
Mm,
and
mm.
that's the apology to killing all the Indians and destroying nature.
Right, right.
And the first time I ever heard that, how can you have manifest destiny in the 19th century when cars weren't even invented?
Mm.
Because God knows I've had problems with my manifest destiny, and it cost me a lot of money.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
it's baloney. But I think geography, the sense of a place, yeah, that's very important.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can see it with the Palestinian writers. It's just amazing. I see it with Native American writers.
Mm-hmm.
James Welch, an early American writer.
Yeah.
Troy Harjo, Simon Ortiz, and
Mm-hmm.
people I've known.
Yeah. And
Um,
Brooklyn, but Brooklyn itself, I mean, that is
Brooklyn is like
a real
a
specific.
country. It's
Yeah.
like a country with 50 mini countries.
Oh, it's like a country within a country with other country with other countries.
Yeah, and I was joking with an African American friend of mine after the strike, because I was from Sheepshead Bay, which was basically an all-white Italian, Jewish, Irish, somewhat mafia neighborhood, and he
Mm-hmm.
was from Bedford Stuyvesant, which was the acknowledged, African American community. So he said, my parents won't let me go down to Sheepshead Bay. I said, well, that's cool. Mine won't let me go to Bedford Stuyvesant. So there's a lot of that segregation.
Yeah,
And
it seems
yeah,
like you have poems in here about in the first section, well, actually you have it's broken down into several sections. You have one section that is called Brooklyn, Jews, and Family. The other
yeah,
section is called Work, another one that's called Vietnam, another one that's called Middle East,
yep,
and then Education,
yep,
and then the Black Lives Matter hybrid haikus, and
yep.
then also something called Variations Towards Love and Peace. Um, you know, I was really touched and moved by the Brooklyn poems because you talk about family, you talk about your father, you talk about your mother, the struggles that you had. Um, and then you had a wonderful piece in here about what was it? Singing in Brooklyn. You were
Yeah,
um, is your poetry about Brooklyn kind of like your song to Brooklyn, I guess?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My song to Brooklyn. Because, when I was 12, I had a vision on the subway when I was coming back from a big Ring Brothers Bonman Bailey circus in Madison Square Garden. And I got into this crammed subway car, with people who'd been to the circus, people coming home from work, Chinese sweatshop women, half asleep, Jamaican nannies, Irish Italian laborers with the cement still on their shoes, and all different people, like a United Nations in the car. And then this Irish guy dressed in a like a orange pants and a pink shirt and a green sweater comes in and starts singing When Irish Eyes Are Smiling. And I
Hmm.
heard a voice. See, I've heard voices at different times in my life, important times. And I heard this voice saying, these are your people, and you're gonna open your heart and learn their songs and stories and tell them. Like I had this command almost. So I just followed it.
I think for artists, there is that thing that, like I think what you're describing is something what James Baldwin was talking about. It's that thing that we didn't ask for, but it's something that, that's in us and that it's a responsibility. We have a responsibility to
Yes,
around us.
very much so.
Um,
Yeah.
the other thing I wanted to bring up, that was very strong in the book is memory, the memory of the people in your life. It seems to really influence your work. How does one connect the person with the poem? Because you're touched by so many people. How without trying to without sounding too goofy, uh, How
You
does one
can you can sound as goofy as you want, Tony. We're talking about creativity.
yeah, how does one connect the person with the poem, as a poet, right? Without butchering it too much, where you're trying to capture a person and not, but at the same time not trying to not get in the way too much.
Yeah, well, I'll just talk about my hospital book for a second. So I worked all through graduate school at Kaiser Hospital on Geary Avenue in
Oh yeah.
San Francisco. Yeah,
Hey, I was born in that place.
well, yeah.
Yeah.
So before I came to San Francisco, I'd gone to school at Antioch, and I'd worked when I was 18 on this terminal cancer ward, although I didn't know that that's what I was getting into. So I took down some bodies and I worked on a ward where people were dying. And then I tried to give some justice and liveliness to those people's passing and situations. Because it's crazy. It was understaffed, non-union. And I got into this habit of doing like portraits of people as Edward Lee Masters did in this very underrated book called Spoon River Anthology, and as my man Sterling Brown, great African American poet, and Gwendolyn Brooks, a lot of great writers have written about individual people that they love and respect. And that's what I'm all about, the love and respect. And to show you don't know this person, they're omitted from your history and from your literature. You give me all this bullshit about during COVID about, oh, the essential workers, and they're showing these baristas. I'm saying, where are the orderlies? Where are the housekeeping people? They're the essential workers, yo.
Hmm.
And they're not there. They're still not there. So that's why I don't give any credence to a lot of these pontificating pundits on television.
Yeah.
Like the people who tell us all the stories have been told. It's
Yeah.
just how you tell them. That's baloney. It's complete baloney. So my aim is to tell those stories, and some people say, yeah, I'm a writer of witness. I witness it. And that's all through the Latino writers. Lots of writers said that, Grace Paley. But I'm saying I want to take it one step further. I not only want to be a witness, I want to be involved in changing it. I'm not just going to sit there and draw a painting of the massacre. I'm going to find out how to stop the massacre
Yes.
and get other people or join other people already doing it who can teach me some things,
Hmm.
like we did at State. I was just a rank and file student. I may have had a pretty deep, I knew a lot about literature, so I could take on those people that said, we can't do these writers because we only teach literature in English. And meanwhile, they have required classes with Kafka and Dostoevsky and Camus. That
Hmm.
was the hypocrisy. And they said, we can't take these Latino writers, the great wave of Amato and Fuentes, and
Hmm.
people are reading them all over the world, bestsellers, Marquez, beautiful, incredible stuff. And they're bopping around with the same old stuff, you know?
What you said about being involved, you're a witness, but you take it further than that. You go to that other place. Sometimes that place is scary. Sometimes that place, it's
Yeah,
when you put yourself on the line. It reminded me of a movie called Biloxi Blues. I don't know if you remember that. It
no,
was written by Neil Simon. It was about his time at, I guess it was in training during World War II. And there was a scene in there where the guy that's playing the Simon character, um, he's being confronted by another private, and the private tells the Simon character, says, "You know what your problem, Eugene, is that you sit there with your notebook and you write down what other people do, right?" He says, "You have to get in the middle of it, right? You have
yeah,
to take sides. You have to get
right.
involved with the fight." And then the Simon character says, "What fight?" He says, so the other guy says, "Any fight." He says, "He's the one you believe in." He says, he says, "Unless you do that, Eugene, you'll never be a writer." That stuck with me because it really is true. Um,
Yeah.
let me see. I had a lot of these questions that were written down here. Um, let me. Hey, would you like to read one of your poems?
Sure. You have any preferences?
They're all, gosh, all of these are really good. The one that kind of, see here,
What really grabbed you?
the one that kind of hit me, a lot of them did actually. It was like a 15 round fight. Um, let's see here.
Yeah, I've been telling people about your description of my book is like the first Ali Frazier fight. They love it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't get too much better than that. There was a there was a poem in here about your father and music.
Yeah, yeah.
That one really,
Notes to my father. I'll be that.
that one hit me pretty hard. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You want to be that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I wake before dawn with you, Dad. See you covered with shimmering music. Notes float around you like gobs of green gold sunlight. In the kitchen, you love making specials. Breakfast of fresh bagels and eggs with farmer's cheese, sausage juice, coffee. Notes shine on memory's shawl. When did you begin adoring music? Until 5 years old, you spoke no English. Your permanently terrified mother kept you in frocks and curls. The Irish and Italian kids tormented you. Was music refuge for the refugee? When did you learn to play piano? In shy teenage years, you barely mention, save to laugh, I was a social cripple. When did you learn to revere Mozart? In the starved depression years? One summer, age 8, ordered to sleep, I crept where grown-ups sang down by the riverside. The summer the Rosenbergs were executed. Your first tenor harmony enthralled me. You seemed too pressed to harmonize with us working then, and for 20 years, 2 jobs. Our home is always a place of music, but it covered emotional discordance. Mom hummed off key, you sang to your operas, disagreeing with rock and roll. Jazz flourished, springing from a search for our own melody. At times, you totally surprised me, recalling hearing Billie Holiday live. What else did you never tell me? What else did I never ask you? It wasn't only Bach, Beethoven, John Coltrane, and the Beatles. It wasn't only the interminable opera, hundreds of records endlessly spinning. It was the inner music where you shone.
Wow. Yeah, beautiful, beautifully done. And yeah, I really connected with that. My father as well was he had about 10,000 albums. And he didn't like me playing them because he thought I'd get fingerprints in the grooves and
Oh yeah, yeah.
all of that. But notes for your father. That's another song. The song of Brooklyn, the song of your family, the song of silence. And bringing out that music. It's just very very heartfelt and very heartfelt and very personal and just very the voice is just very strong and you're weaving the past and the present and these stories and it's almost like you're bringing your father back to life and I could see my own father in this.
Great. Because I have a term in a way for it called reaching, that I'm reaching in as far as I can to bring it up. You know? Like the
So
people that go crabbing in San Francisco, get them crabs, boy.
well I tell you I have gone crabbing off the pier in Pier 39. I was there with my father. I can't tell you how many crab nets I lost in the depths
Yeah,
of the bay. But yeah, it just this is just a celebration of family. It's a celebration of the workers, um, you know, the just the celebration of people that are um, you know, reaching in and finding the beauty with the poetic crabnet. I guess you know we could um find something, find something beautiful. Um as far
Well,
as oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said the singing that we did, which was thousands of kids were singing, doo-wop. That was the doo-wop era. Sam Cooke,
Yeah.
all those groups, the Ravens, and we just sang. We tried to harmonize, and it involved like really listening to each other to get the harmony right.
Yeah.
So we were friends, but the singing brought us even closer.
So which means that you had to have an ear.
Yeah,
You had to have that ear, and to make sure that everybody was kind of doing their part. And um,
exactly. And
well, I tell you
timing, yeah.
what, let me ask you this: since you have a background in singing from that era, if you were to give me an Ernie Brill top five, which songs would you give me?
Well, there's a song I made $100 betting on a neighbor that it would become within 6 months number one song,
Mm,
and that was Twilight Zone.
okay, all right.
No, Twilight Time. I'm sorry. The
Oh,
Platters.
the platters.
Yeah. Deep in the dark, your kiss will thrill me. All that.
Twilight.
And
Yeah.
and the Great Pretender,
Hmm.
which I thought had been written about me because I was pretending a lot.
Yeah.
And there's a group not that well known called the Ravens, and their lead singer sang bass.
Hmm.
So that was a book, Count Every Star. And aside from Paul Robeson, that's the best bass voice I've ever heard.
Mm,
You know,
yeah. Yeah.
and and then Sam Cooke,
Yeah.
Sam
Well,
Cooke and the Drifters. Yeah,
well,
I especially love the Drifters song "White Christmas" because it was one of the greatest satirical songs of all time,
yeah, yeah.
and a lot of people didn't know that. So that was their little joke.
So there was their, so,
Hey man, when they sing that part and they go, "Oh, I'm singing away."
well, I think that was Clyde McPhatter on lead
Yeah,
vocal,
yeah,
right? Clyde McPhatter. Um, I mean, they had so many great songs. I mean, like Up on the Roof.
yeah, yeah.
I think that was written by Jerry Goffin and Carole King, right? That
I
was
don't
their,
know. I don't
yeah,
know the writers that
yeah,
much.
that was their composition. They wrote that.
And Under the Boardwalk,
Under the Boardwalk on Broadway,
yeah.
another
But
great
see,
one.
some of us with filthy minds added lyrics to Under the Boardwalk
Yeah, yeah.
that weren't very popular among the neighbors. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I know,
that's just the way it
back,
was.
I know back in that era, there were a lot of folks, a lot of groups from Brooklyn. I don't know if Dion and the Belmonts were from Brooklyn. I know
I
they were
think
from
they
New
were.
York.
Yeah, yeah, they
What
were.
about Jay and the Americans? Were they from Brooklyn as well?
I don't know them. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was trying to get a group together called Bat and the Guanos, but it didn't really work too well.
Yeah. Again, this is National
But
Poetry Month. This is Listen and Be Heard. Again, this is Ernie Brill, poet, educator, brand new book. Just had the book launch a couple of days ago. Journeys of Voices and Choices, and it's a really beautiful book. Before we end, I want to ask you, Ernie. You had been a high school teacher for a time, and I want you to address a couple of things. You said that one of the reasons you were brought on as a teacher was to promote and to get more writers of color into the curriculums or into the libraries in the school. And then also, if you could just talk a little bit about that. And then another thing we talk about on our show is this move to ban books in different parts of the country. So if you could maybe speak briefly on both of those things.
Sure. Well, I found out I was bringing the English department into the 20th century, man.
Yeah.
They're the same old, same old. And I'll give you an example. So, and they had some money. They said, we want you to bring in books for all three levels, which is how most high schools operate. They got advanced placement with mainly white kids. And at that school, they were teachers who would try to discourage the kids of color from not taking the classes and trying to drive them out,
Mm.
whatever the subject. A lot of bastards in most schools. And then there was the regular kids, and then there was the group that what one AP kid once called, well, there's that group that man the weakens and the retards. He just said it flat out, you know.
Mm.
And I called them out on it, yeah. But I brought the books in, and I brought books that people could read, and also I had this thing: students will rise to the level expectation. So when I did a South Latin American senior month-long unit on House of Spirits, a lot of the other teachers said, kids will not read a 400-page book, Ernie. I said, oh, they'll read this book. There's all sorts of stuff in it. Family, little sex. I didn't say there's actually a lot of sex. And magical realism and war and, revolution. And the kids loved it. And they did great projects on it because I had kids do projects. So if I'm doing Richard Wright's first book, Uncle Tom's Children, about racism in the South, I'd say, okay, you're a music kid, so you're hired to do the soundtrack. What songs are you gonna do? Bring the soundtrack in, right? And the kids loved it. They loved it because I knew what I was doing, you know. And I did a Vietnam unit because publishers were coming out with writers from Vietnam. This is '96. It was supposed to go just 1 month. It took over the whole spring. It went 4 months, and they said, you can't do this with the senior kids in the spring. I said, don't tell me what I can do. Just let me do what I can do, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, so, and the thing about banned books,
Yes.
they were being banned for years, but in more subconscious ways.
Mm-hmm.
I want to do my master's on the straight poet Sterling Brown, who is the Negro head of the Federal Writers Project, for Christ's sake, taught at Howard for 30 years. He taught Stokely Carmichael. He taught Toni Morrison. I mean, I can't do it on because he has one book of poetry, and all these white beatniks have one book of poetry. That was the hypocrisy. That was the racism. And these people are banned. There's a white guy who is a civil rights guy, and you can't find his poetry in any of these poetry magazines. You put his name in, like you put the name to see the name, like you,
Mm-hmm.
Martina Spada, and then a poem comes up, Tony Robles,
Mm-hmm.
Martina Spada, Lona Cervantes. You put John Beecher's name, no, no, because he made the mistake of writing a book about his father's steel plant in 1920 in Birmingham called Report to the Stockholders.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all these working class writers, some of whom are the greatest poets in the country, a guy
Yeah.
named Thomas McGrath, off the charts. Muriel Werkheiser. You don't see her in any anthologies, in any of the schools. So there's been a permanent blacklist on those folks. But I'll tell you something that's more interesting to me about the bannings. A lot of bannings are not as much about race, although they are. They're about trans and sexual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
These parents don't want their kids, they don't want their boys becoming girls and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want somebody coming into the bathroom and playing around with their kid. And they're vocal. They've always been vocal. And because of us at state and other people, the curriculum has finally gotten out underneath from their hands. Because for years, if you research it, there's the Gable family out of Texas. They were determining all the curriculum textbooks, like history, shit
Yeah.
like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we did too much, our generation and the generations after that, you,
Mm-hmm.
other people. And they don't know there's a revolution, you know? And a lot of people don't get it. There's still teachers that don't know who Cave Canem is.
Mm,
And to me, if you're an English teacher and you don't know who Cave Canem or Kunzelman is, you're just not paying attention. You're content to saying that same little racist canon, John Steinbeck and Faulkner and, the three great drunks of American literature,
right.
Faulkner, Hemingway, and Scott Fitzgerald.
Mm,
And
mm,
none of them can even write a decent woman female character.
yeah.
I mean, that's an unorthodox approach on my part, but I've gotten hell for it.
Yeah.
But I'm still standing by it.
Again, this is Journeys of Voices and Choices, collection of poetry by Ernie Brill. We're going to have to wrap up, but if we could wrap up with one of your poems, if you could read the work poets for us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, yeah. I'm going to read the Orderlies because that's what I first started out doing.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh no, first I'll read the long short poem. That's really quick. It's about San Francisco.
Yeah.
Arts work for 37 years involved, working the docks of the Bay Area. My ships come in from all over the world. You name the country, I unloaded it. Some holds had asbestos still so thick, Art couldn't see co-workers 3 feet away. We never got the gears guys get today. Didn't happen until the late 40s and the big strike when the union came. Where'd I work? What did I work? Let's see there. Pier 13, cotton panels from Korea. Pier 8, Brazilian cowhides. Boy, they stink. Pier 20 was Australian wool. Pier 38, copper from the Congo. Can't forget my favorite one, Pier 7, Jameson's whiskey crates from Ireland. Tell you what you can do for me, son. He wheezes, sucking his respirator. As far as his money goes, I'll get by. But better if you could get me some new loans.
Oh man. Yeah, yeah. Again, this is Journeys of Voices and Choices by the wonderful poet Ernie Brill. Ernie, thank you for spending time with us
Let me
on
just do this one more.
Yeah, go right ahead.
One more, okay? Because this is a good way to end it, right?
Mhm.
Or
Yep.
the orderlies, essential workers. How about we go smoke a little bowlful? We both deserve a little something, no? Damn, we both still smell god awful. I'm glad that's over with myself. Let's hope he sleeps and don't wake up again all night. Or it's even money, he'll unload again. Right. You won't have crack creep, you think? No help. Just you and me the whole damn watch. Row, row, row your boat. Batten down the hatches. Take the last. I'm good. What? Abandoned ship? Sure laugh. Quit now? You want a big fat lip? I'm Captain Stench. And you're my first mate. Stink. We save 300 pounds as best we can. Overboard the good ship bedpan. Hell, we heroes, man.
All right, and that's a poem called "The Orderlies, Essential Workers" from Journeys of Voices and Choices. This is a collection of poetry by Ernie Brill. And again, thank you so much, Ernie, for being with us during National Poetry Month. And for those who are interested in in getting a copy of the book, where can they go to get that?
Well, if you're in Western Massachusetts, you can go to Unnameable Books in Turners Falls, and it's on internet. Amazon, I mean.
Oh, it's on Amazon. It's
Yeah, yeah,
published by Human Error Publishing.
yeah. That's a small
And,
press here,
yeah.
and I think it was appropriate for me since I've made so many human errors in my life.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. And the and the website for Human Error Publishing, it's www.humanerrorpublishing.com. Again, www.humanerrorpublishing.com.
I
Once
mean, I
again,
have it at City Lights. I think they might be able to get it there
oh, City
soon.
Lights Books in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Uh, again, Journeys of Voices and Choices by Ernie Brill. That's Ernie. Last name is spelled B as in book, R Again, thank you so much for being with us, Ernie. Again, this is National Poetry Month, and this is Listen and Be Heard. And we'll toss it back to Martha
Thank you.
in the studio.